The Puppet tool is one of my favorite new tools from the previous version of After Effects, and it allows you to take a cutout character, for example, or clip art or anything, and actually animate it by using what are known as pins. And you can see the pin icon right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a caricature of Abe Hirschfeld. You guys might have heard of him, an eccentric quadrillionaire who used to run for political office. He ran a newspaper in New York called Open Air. I was an art director there, and I met Mr. Hirschfeld a couple of times. He was very cool, and I remember distinctly that he did quite understand computers. He told me to press a button and then everything would change, and I was like, well, that's not how it works. So it was pretty funny. But anyway, this is a caricature I did for him for the paper that he created called Open Air, and what we're going to do is we're going to make Abe wave, but not just yet. In the next part, what we're going to do now is just set up the pins so we can actually animate this character. So I'm going to just open up the viewport just a little bit more so we can see what we're doing. Alright, so I'm going to move all this out of the way. Now as you can see, this is a full character, but we'll just focus on the top part of the body for now. So here are the pin tools. How does a pin work? Well, what happens is After Effects turns your character into a mesh, like a 3D model, but it's flat. And you get these little triangles all over the model, or polygons, so that when you try to deform the mesh, the character can bend. So when you place pins, you should think about real-world examples to base your decisions on. So, for example, I'll go ahead and click on the pen tool, and you see we have the puppet pin tool, and this is the one we want. When you choose this tool, you get a pin icon. And you have to ask yourself, what parts of the body do you want to move, and what parts of the body do you not want to move? So let me give you an example. If I click on his hand here, right? You see the mesh that I was talking about? The mesh is shown by this little control panel. I can click show off, and we see the mesh now. So this character is divided along this mesh, which makes it easy to bend. But if I only have one pin, and I try to move his hand, watch what happens. I move the whole character because nothing is pinned down. So we have to stabilize this character as well. So I'll go ahead and put a pin right about his belt area. I'll put one under his neck, at the top of his head. And by the way, guys, this is a trial and error thing. There's no right or wrong way to put the pins. It all depends on the character you're trying to animate. So the pins would go in a different place if you were working on an alien character, or a snake, or an elephant. So you just have to experiment and try to figure out where to put them. Once again, put them in logical places. So in the case of human beings, well, we have one at our neck, so we can move our neck. We'd have one at our elbows, wrists, and hands. So let's go ahead now with the same tool we have here and grab his hand. And check it out. We can move his hand. But what if you want his hand to wave? We might want to get rid of one of these pins here. So I'm going to click on this pin and hit delete on my keyboard. And I have a pin on his arm. I'm going to grab the wrist now. You see that? So he is able to wave. And because his head is pinned down and his neck is pinned down and there's other pins here, these actually hold these parts in place while you move another part. And by the way, you see that little yellow outline? That happens sometimes when you can see the outside of the mesh when you're moving around like so. So I can go ahead and wave. And if I want his hands to stay put, I can go ahead and put pins there so I can then grab another part of his body. For example, under his chin, so now he can laugh. Oh, oh, that Dwayne Ferguson, best art director I ever knew. Awesome guy. So you can take the pin at the top of the head and move it around. And it's just very smooth. And these can all be animated. And that's the beautiful part. And we're going to cover that next. But as you can see here, because I have no pins on his feet, when I move his legs, his feet move like this because I'm grabbing it from the belt. So you have to know where you want to have motion and where you want to have things static. So you'd have to know where to put pins and where not to put pins. But while you're experimenting, simply just click on the pin and delete it and see what happens. So I'll go ahead and get rid of these. I'll grab this. As you can see, his fingers stay put, but we can't wave his arm anymore. So I'll go ahead and get rid of this pin, and now I can wave his arm. But there's too much motion on this side, so we have to know to lock that down. So I'll go ahead and put a pin here, a pin there, and that will stabilize that area. Notice how this doesn't move at all now. His face is being too affected by the movement of his hands, which is kind of cool for a cartoon. But if you want it to be more realistic, put a pin on his cheek, and then that will stay a little bit more balanced. Put one here, and even more so. So that is how we can use the pins. Next, we'll talk about how to animate these guys.